I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Well, hello, Ed. How are you? How are you?
Good evening, John. I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Excellent. Yes, it's good to see you again. It always feels so long, you know. And it
It
used to be a
does.
month. It used to be worse because it used to be a month. But
Yeah.
it still feels like quite a gap, even though it's only 2 weeks.
Yeah, although fortunately I have that gap. I'm not sure if I could do a show once a week and still maintain my sanity.
Yeah. Well, no, I know. I mean, there's a lot goes into them.
Mainly the research. I mean, if we were just chatting away, then it
Yeah.
wouldn't be such an issue. But
Yeah, if we were just spitballing.
hmm
So what have you got for, well, we know what you've got for us tonight, Ed, don't we? You've got the long-awaited Freemasonry. I think little Shalini's been banging on about this for months.
yeah.
And
And she nearly didn't get a voice in last time as well, bless her. So
I
yeah,
know.
this one's dedicated to Shalini, who's also one of your most loyal subscribers.
There you go, Shalini. Dedicated to you. So, shall we dig in to the
Yeah,
world of Freemasonry?
Yes, let's. It's going to be it's an interesting one because obviously, as people know, Freemasonry is a very old and massively conspiratorial group.
Mm-hmm.
There's a secret part of it, and then there's a public part of it. I mean, the public part is enormous. If you want to just pop onto slide 10,
Mm-hmm.
which is not, I was going to put it further in, but this is a good one that just gives you an idea of the size of the organization. I mean, the dark red color is 5,000 to 15,000 Masonic lodges. So it's also very much a Five Eyesy kind of thing as well.
Isn't it just? It's not very popular in Russia. Or Sweden.
No. But yeah, so Freemasonry, also known as Masonry, is a fraternal organization that emerged in Britain during the late 16th or early 17th century. Now, that's an interesting date because that's the official thing. But there are documents that go back to the oldest one is called the Old Charges, which outlines rules for members and was written in the 1390s. And if you pop onto slide, where are we? 4.
I'm on slide 2 at the moment.
Oh, right. Okay. Did you have the map open on slide 10?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Maybe you should.
when
Yeah,
you
no,
started when you started rapping on, I thought I'll move to slide 2.
No, I can never work out what order to put the slides in.
Oh,
It's
so
one of the things.
Which slide should I be on, my good man?
4. Yeah, just 4 because I'm jumping around a bit to start with.
Okay, we're on slide 4. Old Charges.
So, yeah, and that dates back to the 1390s.
Right. Okay.
So suffice it to say, the roots and early history of Freemasonry are very obscure. But the official story is that modern Freemasonry likely grew out of the tradition of medieval stonemasons guilds, and the guilds consisted of actual stonemasons who built castles, cathedrals, other major edifices, and they also helped regulate training, qualifications, wages for stonework, etc. And over time, some lodges of operative masons began to accept honorary members and evolved into lodges of speculative masons, gentlemen who used the symbolism of masonry to contemplate moral and philosophical issues. The shift from lodges of working stonemasons to lodges focused on moral speculation and fraternity is actually key to understanding the public side of modern Freemasonry. And the idea with this is we're going to, because I didn't really know that much about the official history of it. So I figured we'll just run through a bit of the official history and then we can go down some of the rabbit holes.
So do you think that modern Freemasonry is a bit like the need to belong to a club? You know, like you start off in the Scouts and then you move on to whatever, and then as you get older, some people end up buying a Harley and being in a biker club, or that kind of thing. Is that a man thing where you feel the need to belong in a club?
I think it is. I mean, if you look, it's the same with golf.
Yeah.
And darts and pool and anything. I mean, I think men, we have this kind of need for camaraderie, that sort of, I don't know. I think that there's a certain amount of competitiveness to it as well. And I think those sorts of things they satisfy something that men kind of need. I guess
it's the hunt, isn't it? It's the hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, it's the army.
Yeah, I mean, we used to get together and go hunting, and the women would stay at home, and we would go off on our jollies for 2 or 3 days hunting and come back the all-conquering heroes, with the food. And it was always the men that did it, and they grouped together, and then they would have their little rites where they initiated the youngsters into into manhood when they take them on their first hunt, and take them away from their mother's aprons, whatever. So I think it's maybe just I'm not saying it's purely an extension of that, but that's probably where this need to be in a club kind of thing comes from in men. I mean, even to some extent, grouping together as a bunch of guys and playing Fortnite.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Or World of Warcraft or whatever. There's something. It's it's all of these sorts of clubs, whether it's about cars or pick a subject.
Yeah.
So the beginnings of absolutely. And I mean the thing that you always have to remember with Freemasonry is that there is a public side of it, and a lot of the public members, and I mean this is not, as usual with the rabbit holes, I'm not out to try and criticize anyone or denigrate anybody or anything like that. And there are a lot of these Masonic lodges where the members are just normal public figures, and they have good hearts, and they're trying to do good in their community.
Yeah.
But then you have the kind of secret side of things.
Yeah.
And you have the secret symbols and the secret handshakes, and some of that is, I mean,
what's all that
the goings on. Well, the goings on in the Masonic lodges are it's considered private. So the information, I mean, trying to put together a presentation like this is actually quite difficult, because all of the private side, obviously, it's all secret.
But it must have
and so
been,
we've just got
somebody must have burst it. You're telling me that nobody in the Masons has burst and told everyone what goes on, whether they do roll up a trouser leg or slap themselves with fish or whatever.
Well, they do, and we do have some details about some of the initiation rites and stuff, certainly in the public-facing side of the Masons. But what happens in terms of the secret history and the secret side of it, all we've got is speculation, and we have lots of what we do know is that there are an awful lot of powerful, famous people that were and are Masons. So it goes basically, officially, it goes back to 17th century London.
Yeah. Could
I
I
ask,
the
earliest known? No, go on.
Could I ask a question before we dig into this? And just for the audience's education as well. Now, I'm not a Mason. I've never been a Freemason, right? But if I was a Freemason, would I tell you?
It depends on whether you were, because I was in a taxi with a guy one time that was talking effusively about the Masons, and he even made me give me my business card, and he said, "Oh, I'll get you in the Masons." I never heard anything back, but it's that's the public side though. The private side, I wouldn't even imagine that the 33rd degree Masons that exist would necessarily admit that they're 33rd degree Masons.
I'd just like to point out here, people, that I have made a public declaration that I am not a Mason. I have yet to hear the same thing from Ed.
Oh, I'm absolutely not a Mason. No, definitely not. No, there was, like I said, I had a conversation with a guy in a taxi one time who also actually claimed to be in the SAS as well. So take make of that what you will.
It wasn't Andrew
No,
Lomax, was it?
as a public declaration of I have no conflicts of interest. I don't know
Just
any
kidding,
Masons.
Andrew.
Exactly. I've never had any contact with them at all. But the oldest record of the Masons goes back to the 1390s, and it's this old charges document. It was discovered in the 1850s, and it references a lodge that reportedly met at the Goose and Gridiron Ale House in London. And if you pop on to, where are we, slide 9, I've actually managed to find an artist's representation. Cool. Supposedly it was in 8 London House Yard. And other early lodges included Masons Company Lodge Number 1, which was formed in London in 1606 when its members were still operative Masons. The Edinburgh Register House manuscript, dated to 1620, contains the earliest accident record of a lodge specifically embracing speculative masonry, with gentlemen members being admitted Masons, in quotes. In the 1640s, England underwent significant social turmoil with the overthrow and execution of Charles I, the abolition of the monarchy, and the establishment of the Commonwealth of England under Oliver Cromwell. We could kind of do with that a bit of that right now, but let's not go down that particular rabbit hole. But I always think that every time I hear Oliver Cromwell's name, it's like, good job. But after the restoration of Charles II to the throne in 1660, Freemasonry was revived in England. Some scholars argue that the early Freemasonry promoted religious tolerance and brotherhood during a period of tension between Catholics and Protestants. Others obviously dispute this, noting that Masonic lodges remained relatively small in number until growth took off in the 18th century. Either way, the social upheaval of the English Civil War may have impacted Freemasonry's early development and purpose. It expanded dramatically across Britain and continental Europe during the Enlightenment era of the 1700s. Lodges spread to France, Germany, Poland, Russia, Italy, Spain, and Portugal. Notable members during this period included political theorist Montesquieu, Voltaire. We've got a picture of Voltaire, old French dead guy. Several founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, yep.
Sorry?
Is that Voltaire? Yep. Go on.
Yep. And then 12 is Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, nobles like Prince Hall. Didn't have a picture of him. The admission of aristocrats and elites who were not actual stonemasons in the 1720s helped grow Freemasonry's popularity and influence. So by this time, we're not just talking about Masons. And it's, again, this is all official history, so we're just covering what's on the surface at the moment. In 1717, 4 lodges in London united to form the first Grand Lodge, which was an overarching governing body to oversee Freemasonry. Over the next few decades, the Grand Lodge system spread to Ireland and Scotland. This helped standardize Masonic rituals and symbolism across regions. During the 1730s, Freemasonry was brought into the colonies in North America by the colonists and military leaders. A lot of the founding fathers later became Masons and played a very important role in American society. And if you look at, where are we? Slide. All over the place. I'm useless. Hang on. Because I think I'm going to need them in a specific order, and then the order changes. So, slide 33. I didn't actually intend that to be slide 33.
33.
It's honestly, that was not intentional. But hand on heart, I didn't realize that was slide 33. But the founding of the United States is very much bound up in Freemasonry. If you look at Washington, D.C., for example, it's absolutely covered in Freemasonic symbolism.
Yeah, I was in Utah once, in Salt Lake City, and there's a huge lodge there.
they're everywhere. It's massive in America. It's really big in the UK, Scotland, etc. But it does seem to be mainly the English-speaking countries and former colonies. I mean, obviously, it exists in Europe as well. So it's not to say it's exclusively English.
Yeah.
But it does seem to originate in our part of the world. So it spread to the colonies, and by the late 1700s, Masonic lodges existed in India, the West Indies, Canada, and much of Europe. Freemasonry utilizes an initiatory system of degrees and secret rituals to move members from entered apprentice to fellow craft to master mason. Masons use metaphors relating to stonemasonry and use symbolic tools like squares and compasses to teach moral lessons and instill virtues like honesty, fortitude, prudence, and charity. Obviously, again, this is the public side of Freemasonry, so it's very much a sort of their public-facing persona is very much philanthropic, and we're here to do good work and everything else. The exact details of rituals are considered private to Masons, and lodge members gather not just for rituals, but also for business meetings, social events, and community outreach. Now, since its beginnings, Freemasonry has attracted controversy, criticism, and obviously conspiracy theories from various groups. In the 1730s, the Catholic Church became concerned about Masonic influence and banned Catholics from starting organized opposition. And that's actually been, I mean, if you go back to our Vatican and Pope John Paul I rabbit holes, the P2 Masonic Lodge was completely bound up with the Vatican Bank and Marcinkus and that whole thing, despite the fact that Freemasonry was that Catholics are not allowed to be Freemasons. I don't know if the church rules have changed since. I don't think that they have. But one of the things that one of the things that John Paul, I think one of the reasons he was dangerous to the powers that be was because I think he was on his way to discovering just how much the top level Catholics were. But people in the Vatican were ignoring that bit of Catholic doctrine. So where are we?
Well, speaking about, I mean, if I may interject a small aside.
Of course.
Speaking about Catholics in particular, or Catholic as we know them in the west of Scotland, when I joined the police and joined my first shift, one of the first questions they asked me was, which foot do you kick with? Right? And this is intended to find out if you're indeed a Catholic or a Protestant. Well, they were a bit confused when me being me and being completely oblivious to all this carry on because I was a young, naive boy, said, I don't really follow football. But it turned out we had one Catholic on the shift, right? So it was a shift of 13 or 14, and one of them was a Catholic. And oh my God, he was obsessed with Masons and finding out who on the shift were or were not Masons. And he was obsessed in trying to get into the Orange Lodge, not the Orange Lodge, the Masonic Lodge. So every time the alarm went off at the Masonic Lodge, he would be on the radio going, I'm just round the corner, I'll be there in 2 minutes. But somebody always beat him to it, and he always got stood down. He never, ever got inside the Masonic Lodge.
I think one of the things about the Masons is if you're really desperate to join the Masons, they don't want to have anything to do with you. Because of your police connections, I did, if you look at slide 30, and 31, one of the things that I've found fascinating during the research is how much Masonic symbolism there is in police, not just in the UK. Slide 30 shows you the checkered, that is absolutely a symbol of Freemasonry.
The black and white squares is more than just Freemasonry, though, isn't it? Because there's an awful lot of mysticism about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the it's one of the key symbols. But then if you look at slide 31, which shows you some different police force patches from the United States, I mean, it's even more blatant with the G symbol. And then if you go to slide 32,
well, though they've a lot of them have changed, because the New York one doesn't look like that anymore.
I don't know what date these are.
Yeah, these are quite old, because the New York ones aren't like that now. Because I got a fairly recent New York badge when I was over there.
Okay. I mean, it would make sense given how much controversy and stuff there is surrounding Freemasonry.
Yeah.
That would something that was. I mean, back in the day, 50, 60, 70 years ago.
Yeah.
It wouldn't necessarily have been such an issue simply because of the lack of internet. But it's still, I mean, the Masonic symbolism is actually still a thing. If you go to slide 32, that just shows you some of the big tech. I mean, you've got Gmail's logo, Facebook's logo, Apple's App Store logo, Google Chrome, Google Play, and the Google GPS logo. But I mean, the all-seeing eye, that last one, that's a bit dubious.
Okay. Right. Yes and no, right? Yes and no.
Well,
right? I mean, right. Google Play, really? Do we think so?
To be honest, that was just I went off looking for images, and I found that one, and I didn't necessarily agree with all of them.
Yeah, no, I mean that's fine. Gmail, right? Well, it's an envelope, so no matter how you do it, it's going to come out as it's going to look like the apron, isn't it?
Yeah, but envelopes don't normally have that big, thick red kind of border.
Okay,
it's a stretch.
I'll grant you that.
There's plenty of debunkers that would go sharp head.
What about well, the Facebook one? I mean, come on, Facebook and a thumb. I mean, F. I mean, really. I mean, what else? What else are you going to do for Facebook? One's a bit of a stretch. The Google
this
Chrome
is the problem
one
with Freemasonry.
The Google Chrome Divine King sign. Yeah, but that's a well-known symbol anyway. People would use that for a number of things. The GPS one is completely off the wall. I don't agree with that one at all.
No. That one's just reaching. You could actually find better examples.
The Apple App Store, does it look like that still? And does the Android one look like that? I can understand why they would do it, because, you know, it's applications and these are tools of applications, aren't they? But the Android one looks more like a sextant than anything, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the problems that I've found with Freemasonry is that there's a certain section of the internet that holds Freemasonry responsible for absolutely everything, sees Freemasons absolutely everywhere, and tars everything with the same brush of it's all the Freemasons' fault. And that's like saying you can't. I'm always very suspicious of absolutists and people who do tar everything with the same brush, because that's just not how the world works. It's not black and white like that.
It's not.
So going back to the history, there was anti-Masonic movements which grew up in the 19th century, arguing that the organization was elitist, promoted deism over Christianity, or was politically subversive. Some authoritarian states have banned or suppressed Freemasonry, including Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. One common conspiracy holds that Masons secretly control world events, which is what we were saying. Critics have tried to link Freemasons to the Illuminati, the Knights Templar, assassinations, and occult traditions. However, little credible evidence exists to substantiate such claims, and mainstream historians, overwhelmingly agree that these allegations exaggerate Freemasonry's true power and influence. Nevertheless, the aura of secrecy around Masonic practices has perpetuated their association with intrigue in the popular imagination. After the capture and suppression of the Knights Templar, there are legends the order went underground in Scotland. They eventually joined Robert the Bruce's army in the fight against England, when he won Scottish independence, they joined the new Royal Order of Scotland in 1314. The king established a Grand Lodge of Freemasons whose leader was a former Knights Templar. The Knights Templar, I find it really interesting that that old charges document that is the earliest sort of record of Masonry dates back to 1390.
Yeah.
And the suppression of the Knights Templar and their eventual the burning of the stake of Jacques Molay, that was 1319 that they were finally kind of extinguished. Now, okay, so there's a like 70 odd years, 80 odd years of difference there. However, if you were a secret order that was being persecuted by the most powerful people in the world at that time, and you wanted to revive the order in some form, you would wait a bloody long time.
Yeah.
But not so long that that the traditions and the knowledge would have completely died out. So, and I mean, there's no proof to say that the Freemasons evolved from the Knights Templar. But the Templars were actually called the Order of the Temple of Solomon as well. And if you look at where are we? Slide.
Is there a connection with
Templars,
Malta at some point with the Knights Templar?
That's the Knights of the Knights of Malta and the Knights Templar were two different Christian order of knights, because the Knights of Malta are the Order of Saint John of something or other, and the Knights Templar are I don't know if it's so much good guys and bad guys. I mean, the Knights of Malta were the Hospitallers.
I'm kidding.
Well, sorry, taking too seriously. But if you jump onto slide 5 rather, we've got a nice little picture of a Templar there with his horse. Yep,
looks like a Crusader, doesn't he?
Yeah, just a bit. And I mean, the Templars, for people who don't know, they were a holy order of knights that has a fascinating history, because they started off as just guardians of pilgrims that were making the trek to the Holy Land. Yeah. And they evolved. At one point they started digging under the Temple Mount. And it was all done in masses of secrecy. And somehow, after this process of digging, the Templars, not quite overnight, but in a very short amount of time, became a massively wealthy, massively powerful organization that had the ability to tell kings and princes what to do.
So this is
they're actually
Temple of Solomon that they're digging under.
Yeah, well, it's what's now the Dome of the Rock. So if you look at slide 8, that's what it looks like now. Yeah. And then slide 7 is a kind of pulled back version of what the Temple Mount might have looked like when King Solomon's temple was there. Right. And then slide 6 is a really nice image of what the Temple of Solomon may have looked like. Yeah. And it's on a site that's holy to 3 religions, and it's also on a site that is currently the cause of muchos problemos in the world. And so we're not going to delve into that because people don't want to know about that right now. There's enough of that.
We'll leave that for tomorrow night.
Yeah. So, but there is, I mean, it's a very ancient, very holy site. The other interesting connection that I find between the Masons and the Templars is if you look in that image at the front of the temple, you can see those 2 pillars. Yeah. And that's the Boaz and Yakin, I think they're called. And every single Masonic lodge around the world pretty much will have those 2 pillars somewhere front and center, usually on the front. I mean, there's an old Masonic lodge here in Brighton that's now been turned into flats, but I used to walk past it every day on my way up to Brighton Station, and that has the 2 pillars on it. And so this is the thing about the Masons that's both infuriating and fascinating in equal measure, because there's all these sorts of connections, but there's no one that would actually admit that there's any kind of link. It's just, oh, it's just a coincidence, or it's just this or that or whatever. But there are lots of, I mean, if you look at the Freemasons clubs that sprung up in the 17th century, they're all centered around the Temple of Solomon. The Freemasons freely borrowed from the Knights mythology, and popular imagination continues to insist that they and their wealth are connected. The Knights were an explicitly Christian-oriented group with serious vows similar to other Christian monks. The Freemasons had a more general belief in a higher power and accepted members from all faiths. In truth, Freemasonry's connection to Freemasonry's connections to major historical events remain controversial and debated. For example, many prominent revolutionaries in 18th century America, France, and Latin America were Masons, and this has led some historians to ask whether Masonic lodges helped nurture democratic ideals in the age of the Atlantic revolutions. However, scholars are divided on Freemasonry's influence. Records suggest the organization's main focus was on fraternity, virtue, and moral speculation more than politics. Either way, Masonic thought and symbols influenced Enlightenment philosophy and political thought. So these guys have had a massive influence in history. I mean, it's undeniable.
Yeah, but ultimately, were they just drinking clubs?
Well, drinking clubs with a few funky rituals and some odd sort of rituals.
God knows what you got up to once you've had a few beers, you know?
I think, well, John, the less said about what you get up to after a few beers, the better. Please. I think, but this is the thing about Freemasonry, is there's always this dichotomy between the public face and the private face. But this organization has endured right the way up to the modern era. I mean, it has experienced declining membership, but still maintains millions of members globally. And it's mainly evolved into a philosophical and philanthropic fraternity, open to moral men of varied faiths and backgrounds. So the whole thing is, they like to claim that it's all above board, and we're basically, as far as they're concerned, we're just a drinking club. We just do it a bit differently, and our drinking games are a bit older and more interesting, kind of thing.
Hold on. What's that, Chaz? What about Satan?
Well, Freemasonry, it accepts people of faith. Freemasons believe in that if to be a member of the Freemasons, you have to believe in a higher power, God, or whatever. Now, you might say that the Lord of Darkness represents a higher power or a lower power.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the Luciferians would agree. I mean, objectively speaking, some of those theories are that he's the Lord of Light, and that they kind of invert it, and he's the good one and God's the bad one, and all that kind of stuff. I've not delved down the Satanism rabbit hole that much, because,
should we
quite
put it
frankly,
on the list?
We can certainly put it on the list, but that's one that just creeps me out. But the whole point of the rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, I mean, when I was like in my late teens, I think, you know, I was obsessed with the occult. Obsessed. I think I started off reading Dennis Wheatley novels, and that got me into it. And then I started reading actual occult things. You know,
it's
diving into druids and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, stuff like that is fascinating. I went through a period myself where I was really interested in things like that, and I mean, I read tarot cards, for example. So that esoteric side of life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've still got it. I've had the same deck of tarot cards for nearly 30 years now. Actually, a little bit more than 31 years.
Yeah, because you're not supposed to get rid of them, and I don't know where mine is. That's maybe what's caused all my downfall.
Oh dear, John's downfall caused by losing his tarot cards.
Could have been.
Now, if we fast forward now to sort of modern day,
Yeah.
The Catholic Church still bans Freemasonry,
Yeah.
although that's a very dubious ban, because I think that there's certain high-level Catholics that just ignore it as an inconvenience.
Yeah. And the police are kind of supposed to ban it as well, but I think that's a kind of dubious ban as well.
Yeah, and I mean, there's all sorts of everyone has stories about people who were on their way to prison and they happened to be Masons, and suddenly they're not on their way to prison anymore. But again, it's all, a lot of it is speculation, because there's no actual proof that one Mason helped another Mason out.
Yeah.
But the thing that I found fascinating doing my research was that I'd heard about things like Scottish Rite and York Rite Freemasonry, and I wasn't sure exactly what they were specifically, and how they relate to the initial 3 degrees, because you've got your entered apprentice and your fellow whatever, and then the master mason. But then if you have Scottish Rite, which is it's called an addendum, so it doesn't give you any more. It's basically you can do a deeper study into Freemasonry, and it's called Scottish Rite, and that's where you get the 33rd degree, because that goes from 4. Yeah, that goes from 4 to 33.
All right, so you just go 1, 2, 3, 33.
Yeah, but you never get higher than a Master Mason. So even if you get to the 33rd degree, you're still a Master Mason, but you're a 33rd degree Master Mason.
Right. Okay.
In the but that's also the Scottish Rite. There's, in addition to that, there's the York Rite. There's another one called Shriners International, which I thought was a bit of a strange name.
I've heard about the Shriners.
And then okay.
Yeah,
and then there's the Order of the Eastern.
Aren't they?
I don't know. I didn't really delve that much into.
Yeah, I kind of heard the Shriners, and I'm not sure. Have you got any connections with the? Not you personally. I meant in your research. Did you dig up any connections with the Ku Klux Klan?
I didn't. No,
Right,
I didn't go that far down. To be honest, it wouldn't surprise me at all, because there's, if you look at the symbolism, there are some. Yeah, put it this way, I would absolutely not be surprised if some of the leaders of the Ku Klux Klan were also high-level Masons.
Yeah. So the 33 thing, and it's always been known to be the Freemason thing, the 33 degrees, but it crops up in a lot of other things, like those 33 vertebrae in the human spine.
Yep.
Right? There's 33 turns in human DNA. Jesus was 33 when he was crucified. And Elohim is mentioned 33 times in Genesis. So,
and
is that just coincidence?
It's everywhere.
Or is
there is something undeniably significant about the number 33. But when I'm a computer programmer, and when I see something like that happen, it's almost like it's an Easter egg.
It's a simulation. We're living in a simulation.
It wouldn't surprise me. And whoever's running the simulation is an absolute dickhead. I just would like to get that out there.
Just a small point though. See, if you were in a simulation, there's no possible way you could detect it, surely, because you wouldn't have the ability to see outside your box.
Exactly. And I mean, if you think about it realistically, each of us lives in a simulation created in our own mind, because the world that exists in my brain is very different from the world that exists in your brain.
And that has never been more evident than over the last 3 years, mate, that everybody exists in a completely different world of their own making.
Exactly. And where those two worlds are similar is where people get on, and where those two worlds are very different is where people don't get on. It's like me and Just Stop Oil might as well be living in different galaxies, you know what I mean?
And yet when you see Just Stop Oil trying to stop a bus full of migrants, you're thinking, whoa, hold on, I'm getting pulled in two directions here. What's going on?
The whole thing it's
like,
this is what I mean. This is why we call it Clown World.
Yeah, I know.
There is no better description for this planet than Clown World. It's undeniable. So, it's undeniable that Freemasonry has impacted philosophy and culture, and there's a lot of, the founding fathers and all sorts of other people. Now, there is one Mason in particular who has been mentioned quite a lot recently, and if you pop open slide, where are we? Okay, slide 36.
Slide 36.
And that's a name that,
Albert
particularly
Pike.
over the last 10 days or so, I've heard people like Gareth Icke mention it, and
so why have
other
they mentioned
things.
Albert Pike?
Well, because of a prediction / prophecy / plan, some claim,
Yeah.
supposedly penned by Albert Pike, in which he described 3 world wars. The First World War being the downfall of the Tsars and the establishment of Bolshevism.
Uh-huh.
The Second World War being essentially the downfall of Germany and the Prussians and the Austro-Hungarian Empire and all of that kind of thing. And then the Third World War. I thought it would be interesting to look at Albert Pike because, I've known about him for quite a while because I heard this prediction as well.
Yeah.
And it seems uncanny. It's literally like he predicted the first 2 world wars, and then when this stuff first surfaced, it was kind of clear. It's been clear for the last 30 years that the Middle East was going to be somehow significant in terms of war.
It's always been a powder cake, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Now, Albert Pike himself he's a real person, and he was a Freemason. He joined Freemasonry in 1850, and he became a leading member of the Scottish Rite Order. Now, just as a little diversion, so that people understand the Scottish Rite, is what we were saying before about these different areas of Freemasonry. And the Scottish Rite it's kind of like going to the University of Freemasonry. The first 3 levels strike me as up to high school sort of level in terms of what you know about them, and then if once you become once you become a Master Mason.
Well, I guess
then
the 33rd level will be your postgrad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's basically it's the once you've done the basics, you then I guess I'm not entirely sure whether all Masons have the option to do the Scottish Rite thing or whether it's based on invitation only or whatever. That's not something I was able to uncover. But Pike, he was a Confederate general in the Civil War, and he was in charge of Native American alliances for the Confederacy. So he was on the losing side of the Civil War.
Yeah, that went well.
And after the war, he was arrested and charged with treason, but later pardoned.
Okay.
He wrote many books on Freemasonry, including Morals and Dogma, which outlines the Scottish Rite degrees. And his writings are extremely influential in Masonic education. In the 1880s, Pike allegedly predicted 3 future world wars. After his death, a letter circulated claiming Pike outlined plans for 3 world wars to establish a satanic new world order. The first war allegedly aimed to overthrow the Tsars in Russia.
Why satanic? Why did that get thrown in there?
That was possibly just the source that I found because, I sometimes I copy and paste stuff because there's no other way of getting the things done. But that's not that satanic new world order. That's not my words. That's literally something I've copied and pasted and not read it carefully enough.
Everything we've said so far indicates that Masonry is not satanic?
Well, yeah, it's what goes back to what we were saying earlier on about Masons being required to believe in a higher power.
Yeah.
And perhaps the public side of Freemasonry is about that higher power being God or Buddha or whoever. But perhaps once you get initiated into the secret side of Freemasonry, perhaps the higher power changes.
Right. Okay. So now you know what you've just triggered me. So now we're talking what's going on, right, at Bohemian Grove.
I don't know how. I mean,
would that tie in to the satanic side of the possible alleged satanic side of Freemasonry?
Well, possibly. I mean, there's an interesting. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it, but there's a video of Eddie Murphy driving in a car with someone talking about Sammy Davis Jr. and how he was once with Sammy Davis Jr. And he was Davis. He was really drunk, and he starts talking about how Satan is Lord, and actually Satan's a really good guy and stuff. And Eddie Murphy does his classic. He's like, Sammy, what the fuck?
Yeah, well, as you would.
Pardon my French.
As you would.
I'm sorry, I was quoting Eddie Murphy. That profanity, that was not me.
That's fine. No, you're allowed to swear, mate. It's fine. But as you would, what the fuck?
Exactly. So I don't know. The thing is, until 3 or 4 years ago, anytime I encountered Satanism or anything like that in my journeys through the rabbit holes, I always just kind of swerved it because it seemed too it's too loaded with religion and symbolism and stuff like that, and I never really.
Yeah. I
mean, I've always kind of been an atheist, but in the last 3 years, I've seen evil descend onto this planet, and it starts to make you wonder whether Satan is not actually a thing. Yeah. Especially when you then realize that just the level of utter evil that is at work in this world.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's opened me to the possibility. I'll put it that way. So according to Pike, the First World War was to overthrow the Tsars. The second would spark between the political Zionists and the second was between political and Zionist and Islamic leaders, and the third between Eastern and Western societies.
Right. Okay.
Now, the problem with this is that there's a guy called Leo Taxil. And Leo Taxil was the pen name of a French writer called Gabriel Joglin-Baget. And you can understand why he changed his name to Leo Taxil. So, yeah. Because his actual real name is longer than that. He's got about 3 or 4 different first names, and I just chopped them out because that's not how he was known. But he admitted to carrying out an elaborate hoax against Freemasonry in the late 19th century. He published numerous books between 1885 and 1897, claiming to expose the scandalous secrets of Freemasonry, including descriptions of satanic rituals. If you look on slide 37, that's Leo Taxil.
Slide 37, Leo Taxil. Oh, he looks like a shoe salesman.
Yeah, he really does. Or like a really old accountant. Yeah, someone. Yeah, you could see yourself buying tobacco off that guy.
Yeah. Excuse me. I have 2 ounces of old Holborn, please.
But he was also he published a bunch of anti-Christian literature as well, including a satirical version. If you look on slide 38, I actually managed to find some of the book covers slash. I don't know, they look a bit like magazine covers. But that's and I mean, obviously he wrote in French.
The Life of Jesus, the Amusing Bible, and the Mysteries of what's Frank McConnery?
I don't know.
Frank McConnery.
But it had a picture of Baphomet on the front.
It does. So they do look a bit devilish.
Mm. Now, in 1891, Taxil claimed that Albert Pike received visions predicting 3 world wars needed to establish the New World Order. The alleged letter is the first known mention of the 3 world wars prediction. He also claimed a woman named Diana Vaughan received these visions from Pike and other Masons. Vaughan was a fictitious character that he later admitted to having just invented.
Mm-hmm.
In 1897, he called a press conference expecting to introduce Diana Vaughan to the public. Instead, Taxil, his name does me in, just that X. And he basically admitted everything that he published was fraudulent.
Yeah,
and he confessed that he'd invented...
He's Elon Musk, isn't he?
He's I don't know Musk. Where you get that.
He's Elon Musk before the next incarnation.
And essentially he confessed that he'd invented Diana Vaughan, Pike's predictions, and other Masonic scandals as an elaborate prank to mock Catholics who are anti-Masonic.
Yeah.
Now, despite his admission of forgery, the fake letter continues to be quoted as evidence of a Masonic conspiracy. But reliable historians dismiss it as a hoax, and he admitted it himself. Now, you might argue that someone got to him and said, you are going to go and stand in front of the press and you're going to say it was all BS, and otherwise your whole family is going to meet with an unfortunate end.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the thing about Freemasonry is you can't. It's very difficult to go down this rabbit hole and not end up getting completely lost somewhere.
And it's very difficult to pin down, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I mean it's 130 years ago.
Yeah, and
this Taxil, he was properly anti-Christian, and I mean he wrote scathing critiques, one of which was called the Holy Pornographers' Confessions and Confessors. Another one was called the Pope's Mistresses. And I mean that Life of Jesus that you can see in the slide,
mm-hmm.
That was complete. It was made mockery of the Immaculate Conception, and just taking the piss, basically. Now his piece, I'm just trying to find it in my notes where. Yeah, the actual section, it's chapter 25 of a book called, it was where are we? Hang on a minute. Sorry.
These covers actually look like posters for a live show.
Yeah, they do a bit. I'm not entirely sure.
Because they look like they're asking for entrance fees. You know, I mean, tickets are...
Mm-hmm.
Tickets are available here, free.
Yeah,
and then
I mean, bear in mind this was before theatre. I mean, this is when theatre was really big. So
yeah, it might even popular system. It might have been a live show. Yeah,
I mean, it was maybe it was live readings or whatever. But essentially, he and a doctor called Carl Hacks, who wrote a 2-volume series of books called Le Diable au Seal. Hang on a minute. I'm going to pop it. What slide are you on?
I'm currently on 38, mate.
Okay. So for people watching, I'm just going to change that. That's what this double book was called. The 2 volumes were published in 1892 and 1894, telling the insider tale of someone called Diana Vaughan, in the words of a person called Dr. Bataille. The lurid details of her account boggle the mind.
Sorry,
she was a member of the...
Sorry, what slide did you want me to go?
No, slide 38. I've just changed the title.
Oh, right, okay.
Live.
Right.
You should have seen it swap. I just couldn't pronounce that.
Right.
Now, this Diana Vaughan claims to have been a member of the Palladium Rite of Freemasonry under the command of Albert Pike. Now, to start with, there is absolutely no evidence of any Palladium Rite. There's a lot of different, I mean, there's the Scottish Rite, York Rite, there are plenty of known rites of Freemasonry, but there is absolutely no evidence that has ever been any kind of Palladian rite.
Is there a rite that rules them all? Sorry, I've been a knob.
No, I'm holding my hands up. That's getting a bit too Luke Skywalker-y, Harry Potter-y for my liking.
Well, I was thinking more Lord of the Rings type. One right to rule them all.
I mean, there is a brilliant document that I found online called "The Greatest Hoax of All Time," and anyone who's interested, I'll post a link to it on my Twitter after the show, so people can go through it and read it. I tried to go hunting for some of the original text and the original French book is actually available on the Internet Archive, but I don't read French, so that's kind of a problem. But I found a section that was translated, which is purportedly the part of this destruction of like organized religion that Pike is supposed to have been written about. And I will just read this section out. Therefore, when the autocratic empire of Russia will become the citadel of papist Adonaiism. Now, just to interrupt briefly, because I didn't know what it meant. Adonaiism is a religious belief that only God is Lord and Master, as opposed to a belief in multiple gods or idols. It comes from the Hebrew word Adonai, meaning my Lord or my Master. So, the Empire of Russia will become the citadel of papist Adonaiism. We shall unleash the revolutionary nihilists and atheists and provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which will demonstrate clearly to the nations, in all its horror, the effect of absolute unbelief, mother of savagery and the bloodiest disorder. Then everywhere, the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the mad minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers of civilization and the countless disillusioned Adonites, whose deist soul have up until that time remained without a compass. Thirsting for an ideal, but not knowing which God is worthy of tribute, will receive the true light by the universal manifestation of the pure Luciferian doctrine, at last made public, an event that will arise from a revolutionary movement following the destruction of atheism and Adonaiism, together at the same time vanquished and exterminated. So there's a mention of Luciferian doctrine, and this is all. I mean, this is what Tactile wrote. So this is one of a translation of the original bit that Pike is supposed to have written and passed on to this Diana Vaughan person, and etc.
It's a bit doom and gloomy, isn't it?
It's very doom and gloomy.
From the chat, we have some information that says, hold on, where was it? Yeah, fellow traveller is something Masons call each other. Do you have any information on that?
I don't.
So you don't know any of these secret codes? No, you don't. Did you discover the handshake? No.
Do I look like a Mason? I've already said I wasn't a Mason.
No, but you're researching into it. I thought you might have managed to bust some of the detail.
That one is, unfortunately, that's not one that I came across. I saw it mentioned.
Okay.
But I kind of had to pick and choose.
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of aspects of the rabbit hole we were going to go down.
Okay.
So no, that one's new to me. But there's lots and lots of stuff that was actually new to me as well, because I was very curious about what the difference between Scottish Rite Freemasonry and kind of normal bog standard Freemasonry was.
So is there a marked difference, and is one more popular than the other?
It's not so much popular. It seems to get more secret as you go through the numbers, effectively. And once you get to 33, it's just like a black hole, pretty much. A lot of that's where it sort of descends into kind of rumor. But I mean, we've got Buzz Aldrin from our moon landing rabbit hole. He was a 33rd degree Freemason. Supposedly every president of the United States is automatically a 33rd degree Freemason.
See, I don't understand how that can work. How can that work?
Well, I don't know. I mean, a lot
That's
of it
not
is.
fair.
It depends on where you kind of think it comes from, I guess, which is really difficult to pin down, because obviously the official documents of Freemasonry, we've got that document in 1390.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to find anything from the 15th or 16th century in terms of documents. I'm sure they probably exist, but I'm absolutely fascinated where this Masonic knowledge comes from. The things like the square and compass, and the knowledge to create buildings, for example. Where did that come from? Who was the first person to create the square and compass?
Well, if we refer back to our last rabbit hole, Ed, did it come from people that are no longer here? I.e., did we find the buildings rather than make them?
It's entirely possible. All the skills were passed on down through the floods. Perhaps there was. I mean, you never know. Maybe Noah had 2 masons on his ark as well as all of the animals. It's. I mean, those sorts of building skills. I mean, admittedly, in the modern era, Freemasonry is now. What you said is basically a drinking club with some funky rituals.
Yeah.
Certainly on the public-facing side, and a lot of their things about square and compasses, I'd imagine that most modern Masons don't ever use a square and compass in their day-to-day life.
Probably not many people do.
But those building skills, I mean, right angles, Pythagoras, Euclid's, what is it? One of the interesting Masonic symbols is the 47th problem of Euclid, which essentially is a math thing related to Pythagoras and stuff like that. I mean, we can go through some of the, because we're doing okay for time at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to slide 14, I've actually put together a list of all of the.
Right there. I don't know why. I was looking at Rosicrucianism. Slide what did you say?
Slide 14. I mean, anyone who's read A Holy Blood, Holy Grail, or any of the Dan Brown books,
I've read them.
Precisely. I mean, there's a lot of, particularly to his first book, it's all connected to Masons.
His first book was probably
the first one. No,
his first book was probably the best researched. After that, it started to go a bit awry, I think.
Yeah, and he got into trouble with the authors of Holy Blood, Holy Grail. Who were the original ones to suggest the notion that of the Sun Grail, the Holy Grail, was actually the instead of it being some sort of cup, it was the bloodline of Christ. But Masonry is filled with symbolism, and when you actually look at some of the symbols of Masonry, you realize just how pervasive they are. And so I found 15 of them, which we don't have to go through them in a huge amount of detail.
So this is a sundial with an hourglass on it, yeah?
And it's everyone knows what an hourglass means, but they don't get it in the same way that Freemasons do.
Right.
The foremost meaning behind this symbol is the eternal passage of time.
Yep.
Hang on a minute, that's the sundial, not the hourglass. Oh no, the hourglass. Yeah, no, it's at the bottom part because it's a sundial, but you've got the hourglass. It's the eternal passage of time, the sand slipping away until there is no more, and therefore a continual reminder that life is finite and that we should make the most of it while we can. Okay. It also acts as an analogy of the upper and lower, and the need to turn the hourglass from top to bottom at times to continue the process. So it symbolizes the continuous cycle between life and death and heaven and earth. The next one is the acacia tree, which is considered by Freemasons to be a holy plant because Moses supposedly built his ark, the tabernacle, the ark of the covenant, the table for the showbread, and the rest of his sacred furniture out of the wood of the acacia. To Masons, the sprig of acacia stands for the immortality of the soul, and it reminds them of such because of the acacia tree's consistent evergreen nature. Another twist on the immortality meaning is the possibility that it also stands for life out of the grave, which is a lesson that everyone can glean from every plant everywhere. Again, we go back to the flood, which must have happened.
Yeah, there was a flood.
And it was actually Noah that built the ark.
Yeah,
sorry,
there was a worldwide flood. We know that at some point.
Absolutely. So, was Masonic knowledge passed down from a pre-flood civilization that perhaps built the pyramids or Stonehenge or some of these other ancient monuments that we're not sure about?
Yeah.
Next one, slide 16, is the two-headed eagle, which is another really, it's everywhere, including there's a famous picture of Trump with some people taking the piss out of him, and they've redone the presidential seal as a two-headed eagle rather than the normal single-headed eagle, but that's not the actual presidential seal.
Yeah. The Romans use a two-headed eagle, no?
Well, the two-headed eagle as a symbol actually dates back to 3000 BCE. So it's about 5,000 years ago, because BCE is 2,000 years ago, roughly.
Yeah, okay.
But for Masons, the double-headed eagle not only symbolizes the dual nature of man and the Masons as a whole, but it also stands for the spiritual regeneration of oneself through the unification of opposites. So 17 is the Masonic blade.
Are we not allowed to use AD anymore?
No, AD is BC is what was BC.
Yeah,
it's before the Common Era rather than before Christ.
I don't like Common Era. I don't like that at all.
I don't either, but I'm trying to be a little bit politically correct.
Why?
Oh,
you're talking to me.
Okay,
I like
I'll
BC
just use BC.
and AD.
Okay, we'll use. It's fine. It's your channel. We'll use BC and AD. No problemo. So slide 17 is the Masonic blazing star, which is also kind of a pentacle, which has occult meanings as well. And the star holds multiple meanings within the lodge. The meaning given in the 28th degree of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite is that the star symbolizes the concept of Freemasonry at its highest peak. A man uses knowledge to become like a blazing star, shining with brilliance in the midst of darkness. Throughout the various rites, the star is said to be a beacon of truth. So next one, slide 18, which is the gavel.
That's very close to. That's very close to the old. There's a bit of a Soviet flag in there, isn't there? Almost.
The hammer and sickle. Yeah,
quite close. It's quite close. I know it's not the same, but it is quite close.
Well, the Soviets were not fans of Freemasonry and outlawed it. So
no, we can see that by the map. There's not a lot of Freemasonry in Russia or Sweden
No. So the gavel is an emblem of authority used by the master of the lodge to show his executive power over the assemblage by punctuating its actions. It's also, if you think about courts, the judge using the gavel, that's it's even given the same name.
Yeah.
But it's not like the judge's gavel. It's an actual mason's gavel that we use to break the rough edges off a stone.
Yeah, it looks like
once
a mallet.
you begin to...
I would call that more like a mallet, wouldn't you? No?
Yeah, but it's more about it being... I don't know where the judge's mallet comes from. Actually, I didn't think to look that up. The judge's gavel, sorry, rather. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as with everything in Freemasonry, there's an extra meaning, and it means that it doesn't only stand for the master's authority, but the need for the Masons to clear their hearts and consciousness of all of the vices and superfluid. Oh, I can't even say that.
Superfluid?
Sup-
Superfluous.
no,
Superfluous.
superfluities.
Oh,
Well, it's that, but it's superfluities.
Superfluities.
I got it. No,
It's like see, and I was thinking about this the other day, and sorry, this is a complete aside, but see if you ever want to trip up an AI, ask it to say homogeneous. You know, if it can talk, because AI cannot say homogeneous. It always says homogeneous.
but that's not AI talking. That's the language.
Yeah, well,
interpreter.
But it can't do it. It just can't do it. It always says homogeneous.
Yeah, that's probably because of the way that the language, the text speech works.
Yeah,
because they're not. It's mimicking. They're mimicking sounds. They're not. They're not actually creating sounds themselves the way that we do when we speak.
And that's why. That's why they'll never beat us.
Well, they'll only beat us if we're stupid enough to connect them up to defense systems and military systems.
Like Skynet.
Well,
what gets me is right. What gets me is why would the UK put satellites up there and then actually call them Skynet after?
Because they're trolling us.
After the Terminator movies have already shown us what's going to happen.
Because they're trolling us.
Yeah, they are, aren't they? They really are.
So the next one, number 19, which is a pretty famous one, which is the letter G.
Yeah.
And many Freemason scholars hem and haw about the meaning of the sacred G, but most people believe that it stands for gnosis, or the Greek word, or the knowledge of spiritual mysteries. At the end of the day, Freemasons aren't just a bunch of people who get together and talk shop or plan local politics or global politics or whatever the hell else they do. They're a group of spiritual men who are constantly searching for something beyond the tangible world. I to be honest, until I was researching this, I always thought the G stood for God, because they do claim to that Masons have to believe in a higher spiritual power. But I mean, gnosis is another. I mean, it's knowledge. Effectively,
it's a pretty shit sign, though, isn't it? Really.
It's not the best.
It's not the best.
The next one's more pretty.
You could have done much better, Freemasonry. You could have done much better.
The next one's better, which is the beehive, number 20.
Yeah.
Slide number 20, rather.
That's busy.
Now, thanks to centuries of Freemason history and the dilution of some of their core beliefs, the beehive may be one of the most contested symbols in their society. On the surface, the hive stands for industry and the need for Masons to keep the world buzzing along, which is a bit PR-y.
Oh, isn't it? Yeah.
But if you dig into it, you realize that it actually goes back further than the idea of a global economy. And there are researchers who believe that it stands for immortality or the return of the soul. So there's a kind of a weird reincarnation-y sort of connection with the beehive, which is odd because there's no kind of Masons don't necessarily believe in reincarnation. The next one, slide 21, is the moon, which is another. I mean, the moon is a massively symbolic, sacred image, but it's held in great regard by the Freemasons because they view it as the biblical ruler of the night and as a reminder of the regularity of the conduct of the master of the lodge. But there is also a higher symbolism ascribed to the moon because it represents the senior warden in the west, which is an Egyptian tradition that associates the moon with that direction. So the sun rises in the east and the moon in the west, and etc. Okay. Some Masonic researchers believe that the moon symbolism is meant to be a parallel to the worshipful master who is associated with the sun and the iconic pillar of wisdom. Now, coffins, which is 22. And this is an interesting one because just as an aside, there's a secret society at Yale called Skull and Bones, which
George W.
which has
George W.
Well, but
Most of them.
bushes. Yeah, pretty much. And very little is known about Skull and Bones, but there are certain Masonic-y kind of
I think
aspects to it.
This is the whole kind of. That's just leading us back to Bohemian Grove.
Yeah, we should do a rabbit hole on Bohemian Grove.
We're gonna have to. I mean, Alex. Have you seen the Alex Jones video?
Mm-hmm.
Where he went
I watched that about 20 years ago. Yeah,
fantastic. It's just fantastic.
Oh, you've got to admire the man.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can say what you like about Alex Jones.
What a set of nuts!
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's one thing to infiltrate your local bridge club, or your local golf club, but to somehow.
Wondering.
Yeah, but it was good that was Alex Jones before anybody really knew who Alex Jones was.
It was absolutely tremendous, though. I mean, they basically just wandered in and set up shop in Bohemian Grove.
Yeah,
and nobody questioned it for like 2 days.
Yeah, absolutely. And he managed to get video as well.
Yeah. Oh, it was class, absolute class.
And yeah, it completely. And when you actually watch the video, you're just left thinking, what the hell was that all about?
Yeah, I know, because the video from across the lake,
yeah, and some of the stuff that.
Yeah,
because I mean the rumors are that the Bohemian Grove is where the elite, the bane of our lives, gather once a year to.
Well, they do.
Well, they cast off all their sins. It's like they admit to every bad thing that they've done, which means they're cool for another year and they can just go off and do whatever because they've been.
Is that the reason for it?
Cleansed. Well, that's not the reason for Bohemian Grove itself, but some of those rituals involving the giant owl and stuff.
Yeah, well, and don't spoil it.
Particularly from. Yeah,
I think we definitely need to do a rabbit hole on it.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe that should be the next one because that could be kind of fun. The coffin. If we go to slide 22, the coffin's an interesting one in Masonic lore because it appears with lots of other different symbols. Sometimes a sprig of acacia, sometimes a pentagram, sometimes a 5-pointed star, and it never seems to appear just on its own. There's always some other symbol, and it's a bit of a black hole, that one, because there's lots of different arguments about what it means, but there's no argument about the fact that it's significant. So slide 23 is the number 7, which represents completion. It ties into the religious underpinnings as creation took place in 7 days. There are 7 colors in the rainbow, 7 notes in the musical scale, and 7 days in a week. 7 looms. It's a massive number, lucky number 7. And just to press the point home, in Freemasonry, 7 brethren are required to open or work a lodge, 3 master masons, 2 fellow craft, and 2 entered apprentice.
Cool.
So 7 is everywhere.
Yeah, there's another rabbit hole we can put on the list: numerology.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, no, so we've got good one. The next one, I think, probably because we've run over a bit, so let's just make this the last one in terms of the symbolism.
Well, there's not that many more to go, is there? Or is
no, there's another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right, okay, well, let's just run through them. We might as well finish.
Okay.
Right, okay, so if that's okay with you.
Oh, no, it's absolutely fine with me. I'm just thinking about, I don't know whether any of the audience is still awake or not.
We've got more audience now than we've ever had, so let's just keep going.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, audience.
So, thank you very much, guys.
And remember, come back tomorrow night at 9 o'clock when Ben and I will be on, and we'll be talking about all sorts of weird stuff and just keeping ourselves entertained, because we'll go through the news, but we'll do it in a completely irreverent and humorous manner. Add over. Right, carry on.
No, that's cool. So slide 24 is the 2 pillars, which we've talked about before.
Yeah. Which
are the pillars of Boaz and Yakin,
so
which stood
who
in front
of
us. I don't know. I mean, the pillar of Yakin stands in front of the senior warden and signifies the Lord,
Right.
while the junior warden's column Boaz signifies strength.
Right.
So
okay.
they signify God and strength,
Okay.
pretty much. I don't know who Boaz and Yakin were. I mean, they're very unusual names to start with.
They sound a bit kind of Jewish kind of names, don't they?
Yeah, well, they do, but they don't. It's the pillars are an interesting one because of all of the Masonic symbols. The pillars are one of the big ones because every Masonic temple, they all have the two pillars. I mean, it's one of the ways you can recognize whether a building was built by Masons is whether they've got the two pillars outside.
Right.
Why'd that change? And it's just, I mean, it's significant in terms of Solomon's temple and the first temple in Jerusalem, and I mean, it goes back thousands of years.
Yeah.
So that just, I don't know. When you think about where the Masons originated, and to say that they popped up in the 1700s, 1800s, whatever, or even 1300s, it just seems much, much older than that.
Andrew in the chat saying he's pretty sure there's mention of Boaz and Joachim in the Old Testament.
It's entirely possible. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a biblical scholar or I'm not a religious person. Basically, I don't read the Bible, so I can tell you. Yeah. But if there's any Christians who are really familiar with the Bible in chat and have anything to add, then please feel free.
Yeah, cool.
So next one, which is slide 25, which is a sheath of corn. And that goes back to the days of King Solomon when corn was taken from the original Masons as part of their wages, and they had to give up. Today, a sheaf of corn is used during dedication ceremonies where it's laid at the cornerstones of new buildings. The corn can also be used to represent charity to the less fortunate. Okay. So that's, and again, I mean, the sheaf of corn it's almost a bit reminiscent of the fleur-de-lis, which is the symbol of I mean, that's a stretch. But
it's a kind of harvest festival as well. And I mean, there's so many things use corn.
Sure.
You know, as a symbol, a sheaf of
absolutely
of grain.
So 26 is the 47th problem of Euclid.
Oh, that's
which is it's a deep cut in the world of Masonic symbology, but it has an important meaning within the organization. The 47th problem of Euclid, also called the 47th proposition of Euclid or the Pythagorean theorem, is represented by what appear to be three squares. To non-Mason, it can just look like a bunch of wonky squares, but to the Masons, the Pythagorean theorem is the way to square your circle. That's not only a way to remind yourself to keep life in order, but it's also a handy way to lay out geometrically accurate cornerstone for the new foundation, which is the fundamental thing about what the old stonemasons had to do, because if your cornerstone isn't geometrically accurate, your whole building is mullered before you even start. And unless you can do accurate right angles, you might as well build a round mud hut.
So the
27,
the two minor squares are the sum of the large square is the sum of the two minor squares.
And I mean, because the Pythagorean theorem lets you calculate diameters, and I think pi is in there somewhere. And I was crap at maths in school, so don't ask me any of this stuff.
Right. Okay. So 27.
So 27, which is the square and compass, which is probably one of the most famous of the Masonic symbols. And you've probably seen it everywhere. And each symbol has its own distinct meaning. The square stands for morality, and it comes from the 90-degree angle used to test the accuracy of the sides of a stone to ascertain that its angles match the square's true right angle. The compass is meant to symbolize the strength to circumvent our desires and to keep our passions within due bounds. Together, they symbolize the importance of exploring your desires in a morally true way.
Okay. What about the trowel?
That's a good question. That's not mentioned. It's not. I mean, it's the square and compass.
There's a pretty definite trowel at the bottom there, alongside
There's
the
a
hammer
bit-
and chisel. Or
Yeah.
whatever.
But I mean, there's the Masonic. I mean, they're the fundamental Masonic tools because you use the.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just wondered if they meant something particular, but that's fine.
Not that I, to be honest, I didn't look into that one
That's okay.
any deeper.
Shall we move on?
And then number 28, which is the last of our Masonic symbols, which is the very famous all-seeing eye.
Yeah.
And it's also known as the Eye of Providence, and it first appeared as part of the standard iconography of the Freemasons in 1797 with the publication of Thomas Smith Webb's Freemason's Monitor. In the Monitor, it represents the all-seeing eye of God and is a reminder that a Mason's thoughts and deeds are always observed by God, who is referred to in Masonry as the great architect of the universe. Despite what most conspiracy theorists believe, the Eye of Providence being on the dollar bill doesn't mean that Freemasons are secretly lording over the American government. Yeah, right. Even though Ben Franklin was a Freemason, most of his ideas for the dollar were actually ignored or flat out rejected, which is kind of interesting. I didn't know that. So, yeah, but they would say that, wouldn't they?
Well, of course they would. It's like the question I posed at the start. If I said to you I wasn't a Freemason, right, would I tell you that I was?
Probably not.
Yeah. So
not if you're one of the super secret world controlling ones.
Yeah, you just don't know, do you?
No. So, there you have it. That's Ed's take on Freemasonry. Just checking to see if we've missed any sides. Oh, just to be completely equitable, if you go to slide 34, you will see that it wasn't just white people.
No.
And that's a nice collage of famous black Freemasons. So Freemasonry is in no way racist, let it be known.
No one ever suggested it was, did we?
No. And then if you look on slide 35, I found this one which I don't really have more to go on, but it shows some supposed interesting links between craft Freemasonry at the bottom and Knight Templar priests right at the top. And then you have things like the Red Cross of Constantine.
So the Knights of Malta are in there.
Yeah, they're kind of because the Knights of Malta, supposedly everyone's favorite former prime minister and utter war criminal, phony Tony Blair, was supposedly I don't know what they call it, inaugurated or admitted or whatever, but he's supposedly in the Knights of Malta. And I think it's different secret levels. I'm just trying to see if it's Knights Templar, Royal Order of Scotland. Anyway, so that's the Scottish Rite Freemasonry.
Yeah.
And the last one is slide. But that's basically it. So I've only run over by half an hour, so that's not too bad.
All right. But I've enjoyed this one. I don't know if you guys have, but I think it's been great. What do you think, Ed?
It's absolutely fascinating. It's one of the more difficult ones because to start with, I didn't know a huge amount about Freemasonry going into it.
Yeah,
and there's also so much. Literally, I mean,
I think we could revisit this at some point.
Absolutely. I mean, if the audience have got anything, I'm actually interested to see what Shalini thought because she'll be really interested in.
She'll be sleeping by now.
Right. Okay. Well, Shalini, wake up and actually,
she's only got a certain period of wakefulness. I think she's a bush baby, like in human form.
Okay. Well, I'm very interested to find out what Shalini thinks of this when she watches it. But I don't know if anyone's got any questions or anything that they'd like to comment on, things they think I got wrong.
Beats and Dips says, thanks guys, I may join the Freemasons this weekend. Julie C says she's awake. Oh, Shalini is awake. She said thanks, Ed. Did you stay awake throughout the entire process, Shalini? Did you really? Is Shalini still in the chat? Oh, well done, Carol. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. Well done, Shalini.
I take that as a massive compliment that
Yeah.
Shalini decided to stay awake to listen to this. But yeah, that was my take on the Freemasons. I think there's certainly things that we can revisit in the future, and I mean the Freemasons will crop up in future rabbit holes, guaranteed.
Oh yeah, definitely. So shall we put a poll on the? We'll put a poll on the community chat. So if you want to come and visit us in the community chat, now I think you must be a subscriber before you can vote. I'm not sure, but I think you have to be. So you'll be able to see, if you go to our channel, you'll be able to see the community posts if you're a subscriber, and you can vote on what our next rabbit hole will be. And I'm not quite sure where we're going next. But do you have a clue?
I did. I don't have a clue. I don't have a clue about many things.
I like the sound of Bohemian Grove. Have you got something?
I quite like the sound of Bohemian Grove as well. Let me think. I would actually, let's do either Bohemian Grove or the World War One conspiracy.
The World War One conspiracy?
Yeah, how World War One actually started, and whether it was in fact
not the
secret alliances. And I mean, well, it was. I mean, the murder of Franz Ferdinand was what that was the spark that lit the fuse.
Yeah,
but it's a question of who created the fuse
laid by someone else.
Exactly. So let's do a modern one and an old one, and give viewers the choice between Bohemian Grove or World War One.
We'll do that. So come along, check out the channel, community posts, and you can vote on our next rabbit hole in 2 weeks' time. Because Ed needs a time. He needs a time, one, to recover from drinking a bottle of wine in one go, and to.
Hey, I'm actually. Hang on a minute.
I'm
actually doing all right. I'm only because of the video. I can't just sit here and drink like a raging alcoholic.
Yeah, it's amazing when they make you talk, isn't it? But so we'll do either Bohemian Grove or the real. What would you call it? The conspiracy behind World War One, something like that. Yeah, that sounds good. And
if people have questions or there's anything you want to know, or do you like to see a copy of the slides or whatever, just hit me up on Twitter.
Yeah, and I'll probably do an extra carrots on Thursday to fill in the space, unless Ben's got something in his. Ben might still be on holiday, so I don't think he will have. But if I'll probably do an extra carrots or something like that, where I come on and talk for 40 or 50 minutes about nonsense and just chat.
I to be honest, I don't mind joining you on the in between Thursdays if it doesn't involve me having to do any research.
I would love that, because basically you could come on and I could be the guy that does them. I won't have slides, right? Because I just, I have, having been on the planet for so long, I've developed a kind of knowledge of most things, right? So what I'll do is and I've got a kind of eidetic memory, so I just read something once and then I can remember it. So I'll probably read up on something that we can maybe talk about, and then I'll just come on and we'll talk about it, and you can fire in us and we can have a conversation rather than this kind of formal thing that we do. That sounds absolutely brilliant, Ed. I would love that. I think the audience might like it. Would you like it, audience? I'm pretty sure you would. So, I
think that sounds like fun.
It does sound like fun. I think that's what we should do.
Yeah, no, that's cool. We'll do that. Tables turned.
So next Thursday, extra carrots with me as the lead, and Ed will be the annoyer.
Sounds good. Right. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to make every single Thursday, but if I'm not researching it, then just coming here and chatting to you for an hour is fun.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Right, thank you. That's
excellent.
Great. Okay, awesome. So thanks everyone for coming along tonight. It's been great for us, and I'm pretty sure it's been great for you.
I'ma do shit my way, so you can go kick rocks. I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make.
Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things until I'm fucking buried in my grave. 6 feet deep under harder, but my body won't decay. Cause my messages are timeless, so they'll put them on display. Oh yeah, I rap with a certainty, I have a sense of urgency. A message for eternity, for everyone internally. I had some people burning me, but now they fucking learn to see I ain't the one to fuck with, now they looking nervously. And I don't really care what you think of me respectfully. You can kick rocks if you think you're fucking better, see. I will outwork you, turn you to an enemy. Hurt you so bad that you're gonna need some therapy. I got the motherfucking recipe. I've been cooking up hits, I'ma leave a legacy. You'll be looking small when you're standing right next to me. I'm 5'10", bitch, but I'm 10 feet next to me. I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yeah, I'ma do it my way. I can't contain it, I'm coming out with a statement. You really changed, man, all your music and arrangement. You don't know shit, shut your mouth, you can save it. I'm the same dude that got his come up from the basement. 100 songs, 100 weeks, didn't change it. Experiments, development, intelligence, and patience. I'll do it all again, cause I never feel complacent. Let's keep the good vibes, positivity's contagious. I'm never looking back, cause I made a life that's passionate. A college graduate suppressing all his talents, yeah. He found a way to go and change, become an advocate. For taking control of your life, go out and battle. And you think you have a dream, then act on it. Get after it, get out your head and fucking capture it. You got one life to master it. Don't give up on your future, we all start losers. We're all late bloomers, gotta struggle through the sewer. What you say? Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yeah, I'ma